What is up, guys? Destin Duelist here, back with another video for you guys today. So, I was watching this interesting Yu-Gi-Oh! Discussion video on card advantage, and pretty much what the YouTuber was explaining was pretty much what card advantage is and why it's really so important. And an interesting thing that I pulled from the video, and an interesting topic based off of card advantage, is there's a lot of confusion on it, is that floodgates, right? Do they necessarily help you gain card advantage? And that's what today's topic is going to be about, guys. So if you want to see more of these videos, as always, like, comment, subscribe, hit that notifications bell to get every video I make first, as always. But let's get into it, guys. So, for me, I feel like floodgates do help you gain card advantage, because for me, there are multiple ways to gain card advantage. It's not necessarily just drawing cards, searching cards, or however you personally gain cards in this game. I feel like a way to definitely gain card advantage over your opponent is just make sure they have less cards than you. And that's where floodgates come into the fold. Floodgates do not necessarily give you cards. That's not what they do. But what they do is limit your opponent's cards, meaning floodgates are designed to take a mechanic away from your opponent. Not just an opponent, but the game in general. But the decks you use these cards in don't necessarily harm you, and that's why they actually help you gain card advantage, because what you're doing is, when you play these type of cards in your deck, meaning you don't rely on the win condition or the mechanic you're trying to take away. And if your opponent gets messed up by this mechanic, meaning they can't necessarily play around the floodgate, you're going to win. And that is a way of gaining card advantage, because what you're essentially doing is you're making sure your opponent has less cards than you at all time. You're not necessarily gaining cards from these certain cards, but what you're doing is you're taking cards away from your opponent and making sure that they don't gain advantage over you. And so that, as a result, floodgates are actually helping you gain card advantage. Because for me, I see the most two basic ways to gain card advantage over your opponent. You just gain more cards effectively over your opponent, or you effectively make sure your opponent has less cards than you at all times. That's how. So, pretty much how you gain card advantage is either you gain more or your opponent loses more than you. So, generally, when you're using these floodgates, right, and sure, you probably have some other cards that help you gain card advantage. And a big part of how you can really measure, like, pretty much card advantage is certain situations, say you like Geki, or like even better, Dark Hole, because Dark Hole depends on both players' field, not just your opponent's. So if, say you Dark Hole, right, and you only lose like one monster, and say your opponent loses at least two, right, you're already effectively gaining cards of your opponent, because you're gaining at least one. Say he had one monster and you destroyed both of your opponent's monsters, right? So, essentially, floodgates is kind of like that. What you're doing is you're taking a mechanic away from your opponent and making sure they can't play it. So, essentially, you're removing your opponent's cards from their hand, field. Essentially, that's what you're doing. So, for me, it's just another way for you to be able to keep having an advantage over your opponent. Because I'll tell you guys that card advantage really does matter. It really does. It's essential for, maybe not the biggest essential, because there's obviously other ways you can win duels, but for me, it's like you want to always have more plays than your opponent, right? So you have to really think about it. Okay, if I play this card, is it putting me in not just a good position, but a heavily advantaged position over your opponent? That's what you have to think about, and what you have to examine when you're dueling your opponent. So there's a lot of factors that go into this, and Floodgates are it's probably the easiest way to make sure you have card advantage over your opponent, as just you wanting to just take away their cards from them. Because there are decks that have those kind of win conditions where how you gain card advantage is just, okay, let's just stop my opponent's plays and continuously not give them extra plays. And that's what stun decks essentially do, what their win conditions are. Because there are decks obviously that are not able to put big boards always and put a bunch of damage. And the thing to me also that I want to talk about is, a thing about this is, a lot of people think, and in some cases I agree, that life points matter more than card advantage, and I would have to disagree, because you think about, you don't just think about, obviously the solemn cards and whatnot. Usually the life points you pay don't really matter as much. But I feel like just as a standard that you don't really need to have the most amount of life points at all the time. It's because also there's other ways to win. But for me, if I'm paying like half my life points with a solemn judgment, right? I feel like it's worth it because you don't necessarily need to use that much of those cards anyways, but I feel like card advantage matters more because I need to make sure I have many plays, right? Extra plays in case something goes wrong. And like those life points that I have that are more than yours, that's not necessarily going to help me essentially get over your big board or whatnot. So for me, life points are not as important as some people would think, in my opinion. But it's always up for discussion. Really, the whole point of the video again is to tell you that Floodgates help you gain card advantage in the sense that you're taking away your opponent's cards and you're making sure that they have less cards than you at all times. So yeah, tell me what you guys think of this, because I feel like it's an interesting discussion, because there are so many ways to win in this game, but really card advantage to me is a consistent way to win in this game, because if you can make sure you have more cards than your opponent at all times, you're going to be in good positions in most cases. But yeah, again guys, like, comment, subscribe, smash that notifications bell so you can get every video I make first and whatnot. Tons of more videos, guys. It's been a little quiet because I've been really busy lately, but I've been working on some new decks. Obviously the Flog deck is going to be different because we got compulsory back, and I also made some other minor tweaks as well, but watch out for those. But anyways, guys, I'm Destin Duelist, guys. I'm signing off now. Peace. Have a great day, guys.